Hey everybody, welcome to Rinksiders. Normally, I don't introduce these two because they're just absolutely two of my just legends. But we've got them together. Cary Silkin, George Napolitano. How are you both doing?
I'm doing. I'm doing fine, thank you.
This is a I said that this is a dream podcast for me. It really is. So, and I'm in a good mood today because I found my Harley race T-shirt, which I thought I'd lost. So I'm in a really good mood. Yeah.
Someone take the money. Where was that from?
It was was it when he was putting out the bounty on Ric Flair?
Okay.
I can't remember.
George, they didn't have many as far as merch. T-shirts were a rarity even back then, right?
Yeah, very rare. It was very, very few.
Yeah.
It just wasn't thought of. Somebody never really did.
Maybe that might have even been a bootleg. Like, there were guys would hustle in the parking lot because they didn't have anything. It's possible.
It could. Do you know where I found it? I think I've told you this, Callum. I thought I'd lost it, and I was really angry. And then I was at my parents one day, and my dad was wearing it.
Yes, you did tell me. Yeah.
I said to him, where did you get that from? So I obviously stole it back off him because it's my favourite T-shirt, and Harley Race is one of my all-time favourites. So I'm very happy. But yeah, I think it was the bounty on Ric Flair. I can't remember who took
the first T-shirt I remember was a Bruno Sammartino.
Right.
People came to me for iron-on transfers, is what it was.
Right.
Picture of Bruno, and then they made an iron-on transfer, put it on the shirt, and then they would sell them outside the arenas.
Right, outside.
Outside.
Yeah. Outside, not even inside the arena.
Bruno Sammartino, the living legend.
Wow.
Brilliant. So I mean, was it a Vince McMahon thing then with the T-shirts then? Or?
No, it wasn't. They had very, very few items for sale. Vince, when Vince bought the Cape Cod Coliseum and he had people moving in and setting up shop, doing things, he saw Ringling Brothers would come in with all kinds of paraphernalia. Then he says, I should do that too. And that's how we got the idea to really start doing merchandise.
Wow.
George was at ringside, but when I would go to the Garden shows all through the 70s into the early 80s, I think the only thing they sold was a program.
That was it. Wow. Not even photos. Only at small spot shows.
Years and years, a million years ago, they had the pennants.
Pennants, yeah, flags.
But they did away with those.
I remember them. Yeah.
Yeah. One of my buddies was a T-shirt hustler, and him and this we're talking about during the Hogan WrestleMania 1-2 period. Anyway, they made a lot of money with Piper T-shirts on the street, But anyway, Vince caught up, and as you would expect, but they didn't have anything. Hey, even if you went to George, even if we went to a baseball game, it was limited.
No, they had little pins, the pins with a bat and ball at the bottom of the pin.
Yeah.
Scorebook, you're right. In any yearbook, yearbook, and you really couldn't even get a hat. You couldn't get a uniform shirt. Forget it. You wanted one, get it. Just wasn't available.
Wow. And now you can get anything. There's probably too much choice when it comes to merchandise nowadays.
Well, yeah. But it's like football matches over here, the Premier League. You can't go to a stadium to a match and buy a club shirt. You've got to go online or go to the club shop. They don't sell anything except for programs. At the games. That's all they sell here. It's the same now. It's 2022, and that's all they sell at the stadiums here. So it's again, like you said, unless there's some bootleggers outside the stadium.
Yeah.
But apart from that, it's the same over here. But obviously, you talked about the garden and stuff. So
and the same people used to sell programs out in the street just to make up their own program. And people going into the building didn't know the difference. If you weren't a fan, you would buy a program in the street and say, "Oh, I can't. I have to wait online later." But then when they seen that real programs being sold inside, they got mad that they had this bootleg that wasn't official.
Yeah, you get them like when like you go to a wrestling show here, if WWE come over and are in town, there's always guys outside the stadium selling T-shirts, and you wouldn't buy them in a million years because you know, as soon as you get them on, put them in the washing machine, the picture's probably going to come off with it. Like, you wouldn't in a million years. Yeah, you'd be amazed how many people do though. To be honest, when you go to these shows here,
the price is half it's half the price because in the building, the building itself, the vendor in the building gets 50% of whatever is sold. So whatever is being sold doesn't go directly to the WWE or whoever runs the building.
Right.
Half of the amount of what's being sold.
Yeah. I think a lot of people forget that or don't know that because I didn't before. I think it was Cary who told me before. Some of the money actually goes to the arena, the vendor. And that's why, that it's not always profitable to be selling merchandise at every single show or town you run. So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. But I'd like to know as well, like, obviously, how did you two first meet then? Was it at the Garden or?
No, actually, I don't really know. Because I used to be ringside, and I just ran into Cary years later at some promotion, which I won't name. I think that was
No, incorrect.
Okay, you tell me.
Puerto Rico.
I really don't remember meeting you in Puerto Rico. Seriously.
Yeah, we met in Puerto Rico. Luke was booking, but I knew you sort of from going to the Garden, but then also I was front row at ECW.
Okay.
So, they were always 45 minutes to an hour late.
Of course.
So I would try to find someone to talk to. But we got to know each other at Ring of Honor. But I feel like I've known George forever because I've been looking at him at ringside forever.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a lot of years.
And I just tweeted as well, you talking about ECW, Cary. I saw that photo a few weeks ago of you at an ECW show, and I've seen that picture years and years and years ago, and I never until the other day realized it was you.
What, the one with Eddie Guerrero?
Yeah, I saw that years ago and didn't twig on. That was
I saw a picture of Cary a couple of weeks ago where he looks absolutely jacked. Like he looks like he could have been a wrestler at one point.
I wonder what photo that was. I'll have to keep changing my profile pictures around. George, we're on with two big time celebrities and models.
What was
that? Jamie always says, like, out of all of our guests, you two have the most interesting stories, bar none. And I think that's why Jamie wanted to get this podcast going, because if you get the two people with the most interesting stories on the same show, you're probably going to hear something good. But do you two have any memories together which you've both been at the same event? Like you've both been at the same event, or a big moment in wrestling history that you've both shared?
See, I was at ringside, and Cary really wasn't at ringside per se, underneath the action. So we never really met or got together in that kind of situation.
Yeah.
Am I correct, Cary?
Yeah.
What I do like about you two as well is obviously you both were there in the Bruno era. So I know we've touched on that before with you, George, as well. But I mean, for you both, what was it like being obviously ringside for you, George, Cary in the building? What was it like in the Bruno era? What was it as electric as the Hogan era? I mean,
it was a whole different. You can't see. That's what people do now. They compare 2022, and you look back and say, "Oh, that wasn't as good in 1977." But you got to look at it in the eyes of 1970s
Yeah.
1960s. You can't look at it as a 2022 knowledge.
Yeah.
You can't compare the two.
We've
Looking
talked
back,
about this
it's
before,
a whole different
and
game.
George will confirm this. And you guys know when I say what I'm going to say, you guys know this. There was no entrance music.
No.
Yeah.
The lighting was,
One light under the ring.
nice ring lights. And there wasn't even a spotlight, like a follow spotlight when a guy would come out. There was nothing.
Well, most places, you said nice spotlight, and usually most places have one light above the ceiling.
Some places had one light. The Garden had nicer.
The Garden, because it was a big building.
Right. But the electricity for Bruno, if you're talking about him specifically, now we're talking about the mid-70s here.
Yeah.
My memories is that was like as loud as it would ever get, including Led Zeppelin and the Rolling Stones.
Mm-hmm.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
So even at the Garden, there was no entrance music. This was just an industry standard. There was no music in wrestling at the time.
It wasn't thought of.
Yeah.
To me, the person I saw with entrance music was Bad Leroy Brown walking to the ring with a boom box on his shoulder, playing the song Bad Leroy Brown over the loudspeakers. So, and the people dancing in the aisles.
You weren't at ringside, but didn't Gorgeous George have music?
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't think so, because it was hard to broadcast it.
Right.
I always thought, and again, I could be wrong, but I mean, I've always heard people say the Freebirds were the first to have music, but then I heard somebody say Sergeant Slaughter was the first.
No, there was no way it was Sergeant Slaughter. The Freebirds did their own music. It was probably the first one to record something and go to the ring with their own entrance, Bad Street USA.
Yeah.
But they were not the first.
What about Junkyard Dog?
Well, Junkyard Dog comes off of the Bad Leroy Brown thing. He was in the song. And then they made the character Junkyard Dog.
So I was just wondering as well.
One Bites the Dust.
So there was no entrance music in wrestling, and I'm guessing about the same time there was no entrance music in other sports like boxing or anything as well.
I'm sure they were just walking to the ring, announcing who was there.
Right.
Yeah. So
who was singing in the streets.
I'm gonna guess it was wrestling that had entrance music first out of anything like that. Then out of boxing, wrestling, MMA, even now.
As far as I know, because it's hard to say, but you didn't see it anywhere. And then you want to take it one step further. And baseball, they didn't play music at Yankee Stadium when they walked up to the ring. Well, I said walk up to the bat is what I meant.
And now it's hard to imagine a world without wrestling and entrance music, because they go together so well, obviously.
Well, what about baseball today? Where they send those sounds, or the screen, or the scoreboard lights up and cheer now, whenever.
I'm guessing you never had that before as well. That must be a fairly new thing. Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah. I just love. I remember going back as well to like the stadiums. It's just I love that era. I mean, I watch as much old stuff as I can, like the territories and stuff. I love the one light above the ring and the dimly lit,
That's what I said.
Oh, I love it. I love it. But I mean, one thing I ain't talked about much as well is like obviously you mentioned Puerto Rico. What was it like out there, the wrestling scene? Because obviously it's not something I'm hugely familiar with. Is it Carlos Colon, I believe?
WWC? Is it World Wrestling Council?
World Wrestling Council.
George was there for a lot of different. I mean, when I was there, when we tried to do the wrestling magazine, which was around 2000, it was before ROH. At that time, there was Victor Quinones.
Yes.
The IWA, and Carlos Colon, and George's favorite, the great Victor Jovica.
That was WWC.
Tell us about Victor Jovica, please.
Well, he was the money, like everything else. He was the money man behind the operation. He was the one who really financed the promotion. Yes, it was Carlos's promotion, but Jovica was the partner. He was the money guy behind it. I mean, anybody knows about money guy, it should be you. You're a big money guy.
Jovica he spoke Spanish, English, and I think where was he from?
Yugoslavia.
Right.
I want to say Yugoslavia.
So he talked like Dracula. Right? with me and my cousin, you fucking guys come into my island here, right? And of course, Victor Quinones. There's another character, huh, George?
Well, I met Victor when he was like 13, 14 years old in the 70s.
Said he was Gorilla Monsoon's son.
Well, if you look at some old bits things, they listed him as a son, but I know for a fact, well, not a fact, but I can't believe, or there's no way I know that he had any relation to Monsoon, other than Monsoon took care of him. Monsoon stayed in the hotel and he used to look after the young kid, Victor.
I did read as well. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, George, but did Gorilla did he part own WWC as well, or am I incorrect there?
Did he have one now? I'm sorry, one more?
Did he have part own or like a percentage of WWE?
Yes, he did. He put money in the office in Puerto Rico. And that's how Victor got involved. When Monsoon wanted nothing more to do with it, he gave his shares to Victor.
Which was into the 80s, correct?
I'm sorry?
We're talking going into the 80s.
Yeah, well, the 70s stuff, early 80s, yeah. And that's how he got involved. I mean, he was involved already. He was a wrestling fan. He used to drive them around before he was even 17, and then he would make sure that
had a lot of money.
What?
The parents had a lot of money. They owned that hotel. What was the name of that?
No, that's not true. The mother, that's not true. The mother ran the restaurant in the Tanamar Hotel. She did not own the hotel. She owned a little restaurant where they sold food off of the where you check in, right off the check-in inside. And that's where I met him. And that's how he met all the wrestlers, because they used to stay there.
Where was that? East Verde?
No, it was in Condado. It was right behind, it was a block away from the water in Condado, right in back of the Condado Convention Center, the Tanamar Hotel. And a room, it was like $8 a night. I mean, it'll cost you to stay for a month, maybe $150. I mean, it was crazy.
Wow.
George, I always thought that, what was the name of that hotel that was shaped like a boat? It was past the Caribe Hilton.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
I don't know, because I stayed at the $100 hotel.
Because I was parents had big money.
No, it's good to say, but he got the stock from Monsoon. Monsoon wanted nothing more to do with it. He was running it for Monsoon at first. And then Victor later became the ring. He used to put up the ring. He came to the WWF, and he ran the ring truck from Monsoon when Monsoon did shows in New Jersey. And Victor was the one who ran the truck.
Once or twice, or a few times, maybe even wrestled once or twice.
He would always have a mask with him, and he would wrestle as Dr. X if there was somebody missing on the.
Wow! I thought just talking, and again, my timeline could be off, but obviously, am I correct? Did Gorilla have a percentage in the WWF when Vince bought it?
Yes, he did.
So obviously, wouldn't Vince be against him having a percentage in another company? Is that something he maybe not?
No, because it was Puerto Rico. It was a whole different thing. Vince Monsoon, along with Arnold Skolin, Angelo Savoldi,
Phil Zacco,
and Phil Zacco had money in
Willie Gilzenberg
in the WWF, Worldwide Wrestling Federation.
Yeah. See, and you wondered, you see, I could listen and talk about this all night long. You see, this is just, to me, this is wonderful.
George,
really.
did you ever meet Willie Gilzenberg?
Of course, he used to be all the time. I saw him in Philadelphia, and I would see him in New Jersey. He ran the Teaneck Armory, the Patterson Armory, the Elizabeth Armory. He ran the shows in New Jersey at the Armory.
There was a period of time where he was the Jack Tunney, right? He was
okay.
He was the so-called president.
He was the president. He was the president before Tunney.
On YouTube, there's one interview. He never would speak publicly, but there's one interview where they shoved him out to say, we declare it next month at the Garden, something like that. But I remember seeing him, George, in Elizabeth.
You told me this story with your parents.
No, this is after that. The Elizabeth Armory, and remember they ran the Ritz Theater?
Yeah. Yep.
So we go to the Ritz Theater, and I was probably 18, 19. We were getting stoned, and it's mid-70s. So it says on the, I probably told this story on your guys' podcast, but anyway, so it says on the box office, Haystacks Calhoun, not here, leg infected. No refunds. We go into the building, George. You would think that would suffice. Now, remember, we're talking about what they used to sell. Naturally, they sold beer, but you remember those orange juice cartons?
Oh, yeah. Everybody sold them, you know.
No, wait.
No bottles.
No. So before the show starts, just to make sure no one's going to get a nickel out of fucking Willie Gilzenberg. Now, he was like in his late 70s and he wasn't in good health. He gets in the ring and he trips on the bottom rope. And this is for and he's like, yeah, and we were like third row. He's like, give me the fucking mic. He says, and now, wait, the people, it was a rough crowd. The people started throwing the orange juice cartons and the empty beer containers at him. And he's like, stop it, God damn it. I'll shut this fucking thing down. Haystack Calhoun's not here. You ain't getting no one's getting a fucking dime back from me.
That's great.
My parents knew Willie Gilzenberg too, because they were from Newark, and in the Jewish community. You got a Willie Gilzenberg story, George?
No, not at all. I mean, I just to run into him. He was nice to me, and that was it. I mean, I would see him, and he would say, "Hey, kid, you want come in?" He would always let me in. And he'd let me in the front door instead of having to go in through the back door.
Was he ever young, or it was like he was always old?
Well, people say the same thing about me now.
He's someone I'm not too familiar with, so I'll have to have a look after this and have a look up on him. But there is a person I did want to talk about as well. Who obviously, you're both good friends with, and that's Bushwhacker Luke. I mean, what's your thoughts on, obviously, I want to know your thoughts on the Bushwhackers, but also before then, the Sheepherders. I mean, you're good friends with Luke. I mean, a lot of people don't realize how vicious and brutal they were as the Sheepherders.
Yeah.
They were wild. I mean, what they did was crazy. They're the ones that really did a lot of barbed wire and fire matches and all kinds of stuff. And the people who know them from the WWE don't really know their history. Well, today, very few people were around who saw the Bushwhackers against the Fantastics and the Fabulous Ones and the blood. And
I had no idea before you two mentioned it. I had no idea that there were not a clue.
I was so disappointed when they came to I should have known better, but when they came to WWEF, whatever, I was thinking, oh, great, the fucking Sheepherders are coming. This is going to be good. George, one time I was in New Orleans for a period of time in like 85, And I saw Luke and Butch do a run-in on a house show. They were filming it for TV, right? This is the Sheepherders.
Yeah.
And it got him in the territory. But guys, Callum, George knows Luke very well. I know him very well for 20-something years. He knows him very well for what, 40 years?
Almost 50. I met him first. The first time I met him was 1973, Jarry Park in Montreal. It was a 6-man match. The Sheepherders, or I forgot the name that they had then. They weren't the Sheepherders either.
Sweet William and the Brute.
Yes, and a partner against Dominic DeNucci, Tony Parisi, and Al Martino. It was the Italians. It was the Italians against these crazy others in Montreal at Jarry Park. That's where I met him.
Which is an outdoor stadium, guys.
That's amazing.
Tony Parisi, is he the dad of Johnny Swinger from Impact? Johnny Parisi?
No, but he was Tony Parisi or Tony Pugliese, depending on where he wrestled. He was
the villain of Bruno
cousin of Bruno Sammartino.
Yeah.
Right.
Dominic DeNucci.
DeNucci trained Mick Foley, correct?
Yeah, yes, he was. Dominic did, yeah. And then there was this fella named Gino Brito who wrestled as Luis Cerdan in the WWF. But he was Italian from Montreal.
George, who was Gene Dubois?
Gene Dubois. He was later the Magnificent Maurice.
Really?
Oh, right, okay.
Handsome Johnny Barron and Magnificent Maurice. And that's who that was.
Wow. Amazing. I get excited obviously talking about Luke and that, because I remember when they were inducted into the Hall of Fame, a lot of people were like, why are the Bushwhackers going into the Hall of Fame? After that, you said, a lot of people don't realize before WWF.
Yeah.
You know, you have to go back. I wasn't familiar because I got into wrestling about 89, 90, so I knew the Bushwhackers, but as I got older and appreciated the business and the history of the business.
Check on YouTube. Check on YouTube matches against the Fantastics. Bushwhackers against any match, and you'll see stuff that you won't believe. I mean, it's crazy. But this is what they did in Puerto Rico. These are the kind of matches they had in Puerto Rico before they brought it to the States.
Yeah.
They did all the stuff in Puerto Rico against Hercules Ayala and whoever else they were against at whatever time who was there.
Yeah, because I'm right, because I don't think Butch wasn't an original, was he? I think Luke was an original. Yeah.
No, there was Luke and Butch. Butch was an original, and then at some point, Butch got hurt, went back to New Zealand,
That's
and
it.
Lord Jonathan Boyd for a little bit. And they were the Kiwi, in Puerto Rico, they were the Kiwi Sheepherders.
Honestly, Callum, I really recommend you go on YouTube and look at some of the Sheepherders.
Oh, I'm going to.
They're brutal. They're just brutal. Luke told me one time when George mentioned the Fantastics, right?
Yeah.
They were working in Mid-South.
Yes.
Like I told you when I saw them. Anyway, I didn't get to see one of these, but Luke's told me that the Fantastics and the Sheepherders did some number like 32 barbed wire matches in 28 days.
Wow.
Because some Saturdays and Sundays were double shots. Every match, Luke said, he says, I couldn't stop bleeding. Like I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I used them on many combinations on covers of Wrestling Scene and Wrestling Ringside on the cover. With Luke against Tommy Rogers, Luke against Bobby Fulton, Bobby Fulton against Luke, and then his partner against Butch. 4 different ways I used it at different times, and that's why Luke then always looked to me to say that I helped his career, whatever. Because
oh yeah, they're just again. I don't think people really truly appreciate just how good they were. And I recommend anybody goes on YouTube and watches. Like George said, the Sheepherders versus the Fantastics. Find some of that.
Yeah,
and
I'll give that a watch.
a whole new, honestly, can have a whole new appreciation for the Bushwhackers. You really will. But more modern day. Then let's talk. I mean, George mentioned it.
Modern day, okay.
Is The Rock coming back for the Rumble? I know you're good friends with The Rock. I mean, is he coming back?
Oh, well, last time when we talked, I have no idea. I really don't know. I just read the same way other people read, and they read into it. People make up their own story, and
will it surprise you if I don't think he's going to be in it, me personally, but
it sounds good if he was in there for the Royal Rumble, comes in at number 30 and wins. So now he has to wrestle for WrestleMania. He's got the shot by winning the Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
It makes it open. Otherwise, they're just putting two people together.
Yeah.
It really makes more sense if he was to be in the Royal Rumble leading up to WrestleMania.
Yeah, you're right. If we're going to get that match, that's how it has to happen, I think. He has to win.
It makes more sense. Though you can do it anyway, and it's still going to sell, and you're still going to get the big crowd and the big buy and the big whatever.
I think if we do get him at WrestleMania, final match, of course, this will be the passing of the torch, I'm guessing, to Roman.
No. You don't need The Rock. You need Logan Paul.
Yeah.
I agree.
I don't get it. I guess I'm just old and I don't understand his relevance to anything. Do you, George?
No, but I did see him wrestle, and he was good.
Yeah.
He was very good.
Very good.
Which is surprising.
I do agree with Cary as well, because I didn't know who he was until Callum told me he's a YouTuber.
But
he was good. He was good. I'll tip my hat to him.
He was very good, and he's a new character, a new face. Somebody I've seen before.
And he's taking it seriously. He's taking it seriously, and he's been respectful about it too.
And am I right? He's been training with Shawn Michaels.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if he's been at the center, then he has been.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to learn from somebody, it's not a bad time to learn from.
But training doesn't make you good. Training helps you to be good. You got to have it in you to be good.
Yeah. Well, that's true. That's true. Because I was thinking as well, obviously, I don't know what your thought is, Cary, and yours, George. Obviously, there's talk of The Rock coming back for Roman, but you've still got the Bloodline story, which is the best storyline in wrestling for me at the moment. But in my opinion, I think you're going to see Sami and Kevin Owens take the tag titles off the Usos at WrestleMania. Yeah,
maybe. But for some reason, they just want them to keep on having the title.
True.
Just to take it a little bit to the left, there's a fella in MLW, Fatu.
Yeah, Jacob Fatu, yeah.
Who's sensational. You want to talk about the Bloodline, he's really, really good.
Yeah, I'd love to see him in the Bloodline. I don't think we'll get to see it anytime soon, but he would be an amazing addition to that stable.
Because he's very good.
Yeah, he's incredible.
He's exceptional. He do a lot of stuff for his size. And he's the son of the Tonga kid who had the big match against Roddy Piper way back in Kerry's day.
In Kerry's day.
I can't believe he hasn't been gobbled up by AEW or WWE yet.
There's got to be a reason. There's got to be a different reason. And I may know the reason, but, there's got to be reasons.
Yeah, he is.
Whatever it is, he's good. He's a great guy, really nice, sweet, friendly, sincere, and he deserves it. And eventually, you know what? He'll get it.
I'm sure he will. And I'll be honest with you, I was a bit on the fence with Solo Sikoa, but the other night he just came into his own for me. The attack on Matt Riddle on Raw, I just thought, oh, this guy's amazing. This guy's just...
He's been good for a while. He really has.
I just, I think I saw somebody tweet, give me Solo versus Kevin Owens all day long. I'm like, yeah, I can go with that, but it's, I mean, again, I was listening to the other day, I think it was Bruce Pritchard's podcast, and he was basically saying...
You had the fella right there who knows Kevin Owens really well.
Yeah.
But I think it was him that said the Samoans just don't know how to wrestle. They're born to do this.
Yeah.
How I met Kevin Owens one time was with Cary introduced me, and he says, "Do you know him?" And I said, "No." And he asked Kevin, "Do you know George?" And he said, "No." He says, "This is a guy you got to know. This is somebody you should know, being what you're doing, and you want to get anywhere."
Right.
I remember it was some kind of crazy place. I don't remember. It was I want to say some house. It was somewhere where you introduced me to him.
Yeah, some of these guys don't understand history. Some do, some don't. It's amazing. I remember Jim Cornette with us early, like 2004 or 5, and I was talking to Samoa Joe and someone else, like an AJ Styles type, and we were talking about. They didn't know about territory. They didn't know, the point is this kind of stuff. Some of these guys were aware of history. Some of these guys aren't, which I think it's important to understand history.
Yeah, I agree.
We've had this conversation. Yeah. If one of the great Premier League players knows the history of football, right? Is that going to make him a better player? I think it does. It's important to know what came before you.
Yeah.
What do you think, George?
Well, yeah. I mean, you should know. You should know the history of what you're in. But a lot of these guys today, talking about the wrestlers, that is, they're not in it because they were wrestling fans. They're in it because they're big and they got the size and they got the weight and they're athletic.
Yeah.
And that's something else that they can do. It isn't because they were a wrestling fan. There are people who are in it because they were wrestling fans. And the first one that comes to my mind is The Miz. He was a wrestling fan, and he came up to this scrawny thing, and he was, "I want to be a wrestler." I mean, I didn't think, and he became a wrestler, and he knows his history, and he worked hard to get better at his craft.
Yep.
And Hall of Fame career now.
Absolutely, 100%.
I totally agree. I mean, you've met the Miz Callum, right? He's a nice guy.
2 times is lovely.
But I totally agree.
But a lot of the guys who are training now don't know history because they didn't follow it. They might tell you that they watched The Ultimate Warrior or whatever as it was on the TV, but they weren't fans of the sport.
No, that's it. I mean, I've always agreed with Cary on that. The history of it's important. I love it. I'm a fan. I love the history of the business. I can sit and read and watch matches from the 50s and the 60s. I love it. So to know where it's all come from, I think is a very important thing.
But when you look at the matches from the 60s and you look at those old tapes of Rocker and that, do you say, "Oh, he missed something. He wasn't quick enough. He wasn't fast enough. Look how slow this is."
No.
Do you do that?
No.
Some people do.
Yeah.
Some people do when they watch even Bruno. Says, all he did was kick and punch.
Different era.
Because they're looking at it in a different light.
Yeah, absolutely. Different era. Before we start to wrap it up then as well, I know Cary mentioned him, so you as well, George, what's your memories of being around Jim Cornette? I know Cary's mentioned him just then, but I mean, does anybody know more about wrestling than Jim Cornette? He seems to be a walking encyclopedia.
Jim Cornette and I worked for the same company, Wrestling News. I used to do the program for New York, and he did the stuff in Tennessee. So when he became a manager with his tennis racket, he knew me because of what we did, And again, talk about working hard. He loved wrestling. He was a big fan, and he worked hard to become this manager because he couldn't be a wrestler. He just didn't have the quality to be a wrestler. He invented a way that he could still be in it, and that was true being a manager. And then you could take it further. Another guy that I worked with and he worked under me was Paul Heyman.
Yeah. Because they both started off as photographers, didn't they? Taking photos of girls. Yeah.
Yes, they did. And Paul was younger than Jim. He used to come to the Garden all the time, and very few people wanted to talk to him because he was this brash kid. We were friendly. And then when he did the ECW thing, I had free reign to do anything because he knew. He knew. Let's just put it that way.
That's
knew.
what I always thought. It's the Paul Heyman you see on TV, the real Paul Heyman.
Well, he got into this character. I mean, he changed with the time. He changed his character, but he's still the same way, the same character.
Yeah.
Coming across as the boss, as the big shot, as a know-it-all. Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing. See, I could talk about these guys all night. I know we're going to run out of time soon, but
I claim that I'm the only wrestling promoter who never had a blowout with Jim Cornette. Me and him during the whole time, between, and he was instrumental. He and Gary Juster were instrumental on getting the sale for me when I was able to dump the thing to Sinclair. But I got along with Jim.
You shouldn't have dumped it. You shouldn't have dumped it. Now you could have the Callan would set up a promotion in England. You'll be the king.
I should have held on.
See?
But, I enjoyed working with Jim. But I've seen him have his meltdowns.
Mm-hmm.
I never did. I just saw him at ringside in the back, and he would say, "This guy, George, this guy's going to be good. Push him. Can you use something?" Because
he's a passionate guy. He always has been and always will be. I think you mentioned how much he loves wrestling. I think for as much as he complains nowadays, it's actually because he still loves wrestling. Yeah.
But
he's just a fan who has a way to put out his beliefs.
Exactly, and he's just a fan still. If
there wasn't these podcasts, nobody wouldn't hear him. Nobody would know what he's got to say. He'd just be a disgruntled fan like me.
I'm just glad we do get to hear him. I think he's an interesting guy, and I really do respect him. I think he's a great person, to be honest. I don't know him personally, obviously, it could be completely different, but from what I hear of him on his podcast, I just think he sounds like any of us that have a microphone and talk about wrestling. I get angry when I talk about wrestling sometimes, but I love Jim Cornette. I think he's great. I would like to meet him one day, but I don't think he'll ever come to the UK again, to be honest with you.
He doesn't like flying, does he?
No, he doesn't.
You guys will have to come here. But yeah, I think Cornette, modern day Cornette, half of it's legit, half of it is embellished.
Yeah.
It's just, that's his audience. He loves, knocking. He's never going to say anything good about AEW.
No.
Never.
But that's not why people listen to him. Like you said, it's people listen to hear him rant. If I listen to Jim Cornette's podcast and he's not angry, then I don't enjoy it as much. That's the problem. When he's ranting and angry about stuff, I always listen to it. That's probably not how it should be, but that's what gets the clicks.
He's entertaining.
Yeah.
That's it, man. That's it. But guys, we're gonna wrap it up. Obviously, because I know time's running out, and I don't want it to cut off like it has done in the past. So this has, for me, been one of the best ones we've done, because you two are two of my favorite guys. So I can't thank you enough.
I second that. Yeah, I think you're awesome.
Well, thank you for having me. And
it's an absolute pleasure. Seriously, I know James mentioned it, but it is a pleasure to have two people like yourselves on our little wrestling podcast and talk wrestling with you both, because you both have done a lot in the industry. Cary's very humble about this, but without Cary, the wrestling industry looks very different, and they're definitely the same with yourself, George. Both legends in your own right, whether you admit it or not. Mm-hmm. So absolute pleasure.
Yeah. Oh yeah, without a doubt. And obviously we'll reach out and get you both back. Cary's a regular.
You're both regulars.
We'll have the both. True. So obviously, George, will reach back out and get you back on in the new year as well, if that's okay.
Okay. Well, you enjoy. Have a happy holiday, and
happy holidays to you both as well. And stay safe.
Have a wonderful Christmas.
Yeah.
And we'll get in touch and we'll do it again in the new year.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. Talk soon. Be safe.